A bag full of nothing. Tip and his father were leaning on the railing of the bridge, looking at the stream. Mr. Welcome had just finished telling Tip a story about a magic ring, a prince, a princess, and 3 wishes. Tip sighed, watching the smooth brown water. There were bubbles along its edge as big as teacups. "Is there really magic?" he asked. "I don't know, Tip. Lots of things seem like magic." "I think there is magic," said Tip, making up his mind. Tip and his father began walking home. Suddenly Tip stopped. In the middle of the road was a neatly folded brown paper bag. "Where did that come from?" he asked. "Someone must have dropped it," said Mr. Welcome. Tip looked up at the sky. "A big, strange bird," he said, imagining. "I think it's a magic bag." He picked it up. He opened it and looked inside. "It's full of magic." "No, Tip," said his father. "I don't think so. It's a bag full of nothing." "You'll see," Tip said. He walked on carrying the paper bag. A little further on, they came to a place where beside the road, blackberries were growing in a tangle of prickly bushes. Mr. Welcome plucked a berry and tasted it. "Yum," he said, "they're just right." He and Tip began to pick blackberries. Soon Mr. Welcome had a handful. That was all he could hold. But Tip went right on picking. He was putting berries in the paper bag. "I think I have a lot more than you, Pa," he said. "Now you see, it's not a bag full of nothing, it's a bag full of berries." Said his father, and that was all he said. They walked on together, eating berries. When Mr. Welcome's berries were all gone, Tip gave him some from the bag. When the bag was all empty, Mr. Welcome said, "Now it's a bag full of nothing again." "No, it isn't," insisted Tip. "You'll see." They came to a crossroad. People were waiting at the bus stop. "Yikes," said Tip. "There's Mrs. Goodyear." Mrs. Goodyear was a nice, fat old lady who had one bad habit. Every time she talked to a child, she pinched. She pinched cheeks, cooing, "And how are we today?" She pinched ears, asking, "And have we been a good little boy or a good little girl today?" "I don't want to be pinched," Tip said. "Let's run." "We can't do that. She's seen us," replied his father. Tip opened the paper bag. He put it over his head. "Hello, Mrs. Goodyear," said Tip's father. "Hello, Mr. Welcome," Mrs. Goodyear chirped. She looked at the bag in surprise. There was nothing to pinch. "Well," she said. "Well, how are we today?" "We're fine," said Mr. Welcome, in a hurry. "Goodbye." He grabbed Tip's hand and led him away. Tip muttered something inside the bag. "What?" said his father. "It's not a bag full of nothing, it's a bag full of head." "Oh," said his father. "Is she there?" "Not any more." Tip pulled off the bag. "Now it's a bag full of nothing again," laughed his father. "No, it isn't," Tip said sternly. "You'll see." Just outside the village, they came to a big gray house. A man named Mr. Huff lived there. He had a small, fierce, bad-tempered dog. As Tip and his father neared the house, they heard the dog barking. "Don't be afraid," said Mr. Welcome. "Just stand still for a minute." The dog came bounding across the lawn, making a furious racket. Tip blew the bag up full of air. He held the top tightly closed. Then he hit the bag as hard as he could. Bang! The dog skidded to a stop. He turned smack around and almost fell flat. Away he ran with his tail between his legs. "There," said Tip. "It was a bag full of noise." Mr. Welcome scratched his head. "I guess you were right," he said. "It was a kind of magic bag after all." Tip opened it and looked inside. "Now it's got a hole in it," he said sadly. "A bag full of holes?" "No, just one hole, but that's enough. There's no more bag." "Well," said his father, putting a hand on Tip's shoulder, "in fairy tales there are always 3 wishes or 3 marvelous adventures. That's what you had, so that makes it even more magical." Tip looked worried. And now I guess I'll have to marry the princess and live happily ever after." "Not just yet," said his father, "but you can have an ice cream cone and live happily ever after until dinner."